right, really excited to be here. Thanks, guys. Welcome to What's New in WinUI and the Windows App SDK 1.6. I am Michael Hawker, also known as the XAML Llama, thus the hat, and with me is the bald bearded builder, Michael Jolly. Welcome.
Thanks for the introduction. I didn't realize I was going to be two roles in this presentation for a minute there. Scared myself. I'm really excited to learn more about WinUI and WinApp SDK 1.6. So, Michael, you want to talk about what we're going to cover?
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to be giving you a overview of what your Windows native app options are for development, why you want to think about Windows native app development, and then of course, just like the title of the session, we're going to dive into what WinUI and the Windows App SDK are, what's new within that in our latest release 1.6 from September, and you, Michael, you have a couple of demos to share with us too, right?
Yeah, I've got a camera app that I actually converted to use AOT. I want to show that off to you because it's really cool. And then I've got an app that's using that tab view tear out. It's actually using the tab view. I need your help to use the tear out. So maybe we can get to that.
Yeah, no, that'd be really cool. I certainly can help you with that. And we'll just end after that with what's coming up next in WinUI and the Windows App SDK. So let's dive in. Why do you want to consider Windows app development, right? Why build native Windows apps? There's a variety of different reasons you might want to consider building native apps, just like we see some of our partners and community apps and our own apps build on Windows as well. It might be to get access to the underlying hardware and have a performant experience. You might want to access specific Windows APIs. You might want some deeper integration with Windows or looking to get that Windows look and feel and integrate within that great user experience. You might be looking to add rich offline capabilities to your application, or maybe you're looking to integrate with APIs from the Microsoft Store and get monetization for your app. There's a lot of different variety of reasons that you might want to build a Windows native app, and it might be some or all of these.
Yeah, and one of the things that really excites me is the way all of the SDKs and tooling we provide lets you kind of come with what you're used to. So if you're more of a JavaScript person, you have the option to do like a PWA. If you're an Angular person, Vue person, go for it. Build your PWA and you can be native. You can also, of course, use Blazor across all those different ways. WebView 2 is available to you. And then even if you needed cross-platform, you can use React skills with React Native, or even .NET and MAUI is a great option for that now. But for native, I've just got to get on Windows. I mean, WinForms is a classic, right? And then you've got WPF that's been around for an eternity at this point. And of course, WinUI, which is what we're going to mainly talk about today, I think.
Right, exactly. That's what we're talking. That's what we were talking about. WinUI. So let's dive into that in case you're not familiar. Right? What is WinUI? It's the native UI platform for Windows 10 and Windows 11. It's built for modern hardware and devices and offers that latest look and feel with our fluent design language that makes it look like it's running on Windows. And of course, we're here at .NET Conf. You can build with C# in your .NET ecosystem. You can also use C++ if you desire, and it works on x86, x64, and of course ARM64 architectures. And it powers parts of the Windows shell, many of our applications that we build here at Microsoft, as well as platforms like you just talked about, like .NET MAUI and React Native for Windows when they're running on Windows.
So what you're saying is, if I'm understanding you, .NET and MAUI and even React Native will compile their version for Windows using WinUI?
Yeah, so when .NET MAUI is running on Windows, it will be using those WinUI components that we're going to be talking about today to create that experience. So it's really kind of got this wide breadth of capabilities that we see in the ecosystem for Windows apps.
Yeah, see, you've got the next bullet point there, but I'm going to interrupt you because you've got part of the Windows App SDK, but I'm kind of confused about that because I hear WinUI, I hear WinApp SDK, and I don't really know what the difference between the two is.
Yeah, that's a good question. We normally kind of lump these two things together when we're talking about them, but the Windows App SDK is really a whole set of different capabilities that you can use within your Windows applications. And WinUI is just part of that. It's a UX framework that comes within the Windows App SDK, but you're not required to use it. If you're using WPF or just using Win32 APIs and C++, or like we talked about using .NET MAUI or React Native for Windows, whatever that Windows native application framework you're using is, you can leverage the Windows App SDK to access some of these other APIs. So you have lifecycle APIs, so if you're looking for battery power and performance on your application on mobile devices, you can access those. There's the Islands, Windows, and Scene Graph APIs, so if you're looking to modernize your application in different pieces, you can kind of build up things over time with those APIs. We actually have a great talk at Ignite next week that's going to be diving into that discussion on those APIs, as well as how Office is leveraging them to modernize Office using the Windows App SDK. So I'm really excited about that talk. And then we mentioned at Build, our new AI APIs in the Windows Copilot library will be coming, but we've actually renamed that. It's going to be called the Windows Copilot Runtime APIs. So those AI APIs are going to be coming to the Windows App SDK as well.
Yeah, and I see that big square right in the middle with those Copilot Runtime APIs. If I'm not mistaken, that lets me build AI into my native Windows apps, but using local models.
Exactly, right. The Windows Copilot Runtime APIs will let you run models locally on your machine so you can get better performance or security and privacy on your machine, just being able to do those operations. So we'll talk a little bit more about those later when we get to the end of the talk.
Nice.
So now that we've kind of distinguished what WinUI and Windows App SDK are and how they're related, let's talk about what's new in WinUI that came as part of our last release, 1.6. So you had mentioned before you have the tab view app that you need some help with, and that's one of the things that came in the update is improved APIs for tear out. So we'll be covering that in a little bit with some code and diving in. We also have wrap mode for Pips Pager. You might ask what Pips Pager is, and you probably didn't realize you've actually probably already used it. The little dots you see on the Start menu that show the different pages, that control there that shows those dots is the Pips Pager. And so now that control can wrap around.
So are those, I guess those dots are pips.
Yes, exactly. The dots are pips, and so that's why it's called the Pips Pager.
Sense.
Each pip represents a page, so you can have that kind of scrolling paged experience within your user interface. We have more customization for the rating control, and we also unsealed the items wrap grid. So unsealing the control makes it easier for developers, either building libraries or within your application, to extend that class and build on top of it. And so this was really just a their first step in looking at how we can unseal different components in the SDK and work towards hopefully unsealing more of those in the future. And so digging into the Windows App SDK 1.6, we have some features that all different Windows apps can use. So we decoupled the WebView 2 version within the Windows App SDK package.
Now let me ask about that, because I know in the past, like WinApp SDK has had that WebView 2 kind of package kind of tied to it. So I was kind of stuck with whatever package was in that. Does this let me use newer versions of WebView 2? Like I could just NuGet, install something new?
Exactly, yeah. So it used to be that whatever version of WebView 2 you wanted to use was locked to the version of the Windows App SDK you were using. And so now with the latest release, those are decoupled. And so WebView 2 ships, I think, once or twice a month. They have a faster cadence. And so if there's some new feature that they're shipping, just right away that you want to use, you can now update your WebView 2 version independently and pull that in for your app.
Very cool.
Yeah. There's also new package deployment APIs, so if you're doing anything with packaging and having extensions or optional packages or all those sorts of things, there's some new APIs there that have been added to make it easier for your application to manage that more directly. We also have improvements to the globalization and resource APIs as well that are part of the Windows App SDK. And the big thing that we're here to talk about next is native AOT support, and basically giving your applications running .NET more performance.
Yeah, I'm excited to show you a demo of the app I've got here.
Yeah, you've been itching to show me all day. So, but right before we jump in there, let's make sure everyone knows what native AOT support means and what it is.
Okay.
So native AOT is really an option for publishing your application that takes all of that .NET goodness that you have and everything that's that it takes to run your application and compiling that down to native bits that can just run directly on the hardware without needing the .NET runtime. So that way, if you want to run it on another machine for someone who doesn't have .NET, you can do that. And the new native AOT instrumentation in .NET makes sure that when you're debugging, it's kind of simulating what's going to happen at your publish time, so you know what's going to break within your app and not going to be compatible in that mode. So you know ahead of time what's going to happen, rather than kind of past experiences where you might kind of try and compile your app, run it in a ahead of time compilation scenario, and then it would just crash because you're using reflection or something that it didn't know that wasn't possible. So now with the new instrumentation in .NET, you can kind of discern all that ahead of time and make sure your app's going to be successful when you deploy it to production.
Well, can I show you now?
Yes, you can show me now. We're all good to go. It's demo time.
I tried to show my wife. I tried to show my wife, but she doesn't care. So I need somebody to appreciate this. So I compiled it not AOT, and I compiled it in an AOT version. So, and then I created a bat file that would load them both at the same time. So you can kind of see the speed opening difference, right?
All right, hit the button.
So let me run that bat. Okay, so there they were. That wasn't a big difference.
I was going to say, they almost came up at the same time.
Yeah, one was quicker. But, I mean, I'm running on a dev box up in the cloud that's like all souped up with tons of memory and processor and all that. But like on my local machine or my laptop, it's very noticeable. And I'll show you a demo of that later. I actually have a recording of it. But cool. I'm going to oh, wait, no, I want to leave those running because I want to show you the memory footprint.
Right, yeah, there's other benefits, right? It's not just faster startup time, it's memory and package size.
Yeah, so if I look in the task manager, there's the non-AOT compiled app, 51 megs. The AOT one is 36, so better than 20% reduction in memory. And it doesn't show here, but even the package size is considerably lower.
Right, yeah, that's a big improvement.
Yeah, and it was relatively straightforward to work on and get it done. Now, I'll preface that by saying this app was really basic. So like the more complex your app is, the more you're going to have to worry about because you have to think about dependencies. Is that dependency AOT compatible? But for me, I didn't have any of that. So I had it easy. I just added like some settings to my CS proj. Yep. I did have to make sure like all of my classes were partial so that it can get in there and add all the stuff it needs to.
Right, and really, once you set that publish AOT flag, it started telling you these things that you had to modify in your project, right?
Yeah, I was going to mention that. Like, so one of the things that's nice is it will start giving you all kinds of warnings and stuff to let you start cleaning things up. It's like, hey, this is not going to work. Fix this before we can compile, which was great. And ran through it, and you saw it. It was pretty quick.
Yeah, I've started adding partial to a lot of my classes anyway because of source generators, and so there's no downside to doing that, and it's just a great practice I've started getting into.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's go back to the slides. We can show me that video you said you had of the comparison on your other machine.
Yeah, it's so fancy. Watch. Did you see the difference on that one? That was nuts.
Right. So the right one is AOT, and the one on the left is without AOT.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was maybe 50% faster. And of course, like I mentioned, the package size is a lot smaller. The memory footprint was, you saw, much smaller. And I think it's like kind of important to point out that my app was tiny and it was, a 20 megs lower in memory usage. You can imagine if somebody's building a more complex application for their line of business, they could really see even bigger gains there.
Yeah, and that's what we've seen in our testing is, with the sample app you just showed, with the WinUI 3 gallery, which is a great sample of how to get started with WinUI that's in the Microsoft Store, and with a demo app that we tested, like across the board, we saw the package size decrease, we saw the startup time improve, and we saw the memory footprint shrink. So it was just improvements all over.
Yeah, it's impressive, but moving on from AOT, though, can we talk about my tab view app?
Yeah, you said you wanted some help. So you had some tab view, but you want to leverage this new tear out feature, right? So what's tearing out? We need to remind people probably, right?
Yeah, so like when you have a tab, like the best example I can give you is of Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio, where you have a tab open in that app and you drag it and can bring it out into its own window, or maybe you just have like different tabs open, like different columns and sort of things in your app. That's tear out, basically tearing it out and then dropping it back in.
Right. So here's your app. So you've got a tab view already, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's my tab view. I've got a beautiful tab sitting there. I can click new document. Look, I got a new tab. Hey, new tab 3, new document. I can delete those, but like if I go to click and drag it, sorry, that's about as far as it's going to go. I can't drop it out and open a new window.
Cool. So we've already updated the app to the latest 1.6 release. So we're just going to dive in here and use this new property. So there's a property and 4 events that we need to add. So we're going to go to the tab view and add the first property, which is can tear out tabs, and just set that to true.
Okay. All right.
And then the 4 events have either torn out or tear out in their name. So the first ones are, external turn out. We're just going to add these in alphabetical order and get the stub methods in there. And IntelliSense really makes this really easy just to get going. And so these last 2 here, the tab tear out requested and the windowing event here, start the process, right? So when you tear the tab out of the window, it's going to first call that last method to request that, hey, what's that new window? And then it's going to want to transfer the tab that you're dragging from your original window to that new window. So those are those first 2 events and what they're doing. And then the other 2 events are basically the reverse of the pattern, right? Can I drag a tab back into the app? Yes or no? And then how do I actually take that tab from the floating window that you were dragging around and put it back in the window that you're dropping it on? So that's what these 2 pairs of events are doing. And so just we need a little bit of code here to glue it all together.
Am I right? Those are the 2 that are like the tab that's leaving.
Yeah.
And this is the 2 that it's coming to.
Exactly. Yeah.
That makes total sense. Okay.
Yeah. So let's dive into the code here, and we can start. Let's start from the bottom up, right? We have to create the window first when we're dragging the tab out. So we'll go to the bottom.
Okay.
And so in the tab tear out window requested, first off, yes, we need to keep track of the window that we're going to create. So we're going to create a property. Okay. And I guess you can just put it at the top there. That's a reference to that window.
I gotta keep my code looking pretty.
Yeah. Code styling is important. You want other people to be able to read it.
Oh, I know.
Okay, so now in this method, we're going to set that field that we created, and we're going to use a helper that we grabbed from the WinUI gallery. That's that window helper class that's going to create the window for us. So that was just a file we could grab directly from the WinUI gallery in the Microsoft Store. There's a lot of great samples there, including the complete version of this sample that we're showing you today. So if you need to grab this, it'll be available in the next update of the gallery app. So the next thing we do is we're going to set the content of that window. So we've created a main page class that holds our tab view and all the UI that represents our application. So we're just going to duplicate that into the new window, right? So the app looks the same in the 2 windows.
Right.
And then finally, we just tell the tab API what that new window ID is, so it can keep track of the window for us from here.
Okay.
And then the second part, right? So that's we create the window. We need to put the tab from our original window in that new window. So that's what we're going to do in the tab tear out requested field method here. We're going to grab the content of our window, right, to get that new main page that we just created below on line 77. And then we have a reference to our tab. So the original tab view, we're going to remove that tab, right? So that's that sender.tabitems.remove. And then we need to add the tab to that new main page, right? But we don't have access to the tab view in main page. So we're going to create a method here just to help us add tab to tabs. And that's just going to basically reach into the tab view of that page and add the tab for us.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so now if you run this, we can actually see this happen. You'll be able to drag the tabs out of your application.
Oh, cool. I think I can.
Yeah. The thing that trips me up is when I have multiple monitors and it always goes on the monitor that I'm not expecting.
Yep. Yeah. I've got one on behind me back there, and sometimes it opens. It drives me nuts. So new document 1, same deal. I can, create new ones, delete them, but then I can drag it out. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, you can do that as many times as you want now.
So does it work like with it works with the Windows layout stuff?
Right, and if you're dragging a tab out, like while you're dragging the tab, you can actually use the Snap OS integration as well. So that's the really cool improvement with this feature. It just makes it so much smoother from a user experience to
that's nice.
to work with these tabs.
But like we didn't do the dropping and the external ones, so like I can't bring it back
Right, yeah, we've only done half.
and
So,
drop
so
it.
let's go implement that other half here.
Okay.
So the
I'm
first
impatient.
method is really easy, this dropping event. It's just asking like, hey, can we drop the tab here? So we want to say args.allowDrop equals true, and we're going to be done. So this is just saying,
okay.
yep, we're allowed to drop tabs
Yeah.
on the tab view. And then the second method is basically just like our tab tearout requested, where we're going to transfer that tab. And so we're going to do a similar pattern here. The main difference here is that we just have a reference to the tab, and so we need to find its parent tab view that it's contained within in order to remove it from that. And so we're going to use this helper find ascendant from the Windows Community Toolkit. Actually, I have a talk about the toolkits tomorrow. And so we've got a reference for that in our project already. So we can just use this method, and it's going to walk up from our current tab in the visual tree and find the parent tab view. And so, of course, once we have the tab view, we can remove the tab from it. And so that removes it from our floating window that we're dragging in. And then we're simply going to just add the tab back to the tab view. So that's that sender tab items.insert there.
Okay.
And so now if we run this, we should be done.
Oh, wow.
So it looks a little complicated at first, but walking through it here bit by bit, it's just two different pieces of a process of dragging out.
Yeah, you're just handling the
putting back.
Sender and receiver, essentially. Okay, so I can still create new ones. I'm going to pull out document 2. Works like a champ. Now, if I bring document 4 back over, yeah. Oh, wait. It just, hold on. Did it just keep up with like the index where I wanted it? So
yeah, exactly. So wherever you're dragging it, you can move the index around. That's why we're using insert there with an index rather than the add that we did originally to just add it to a blank new window.
Yeah, so I could stick it at the end if I wanted, but oh, that's slick. That's slick. I like it.
Great. So I'm glad I could help you out. Let's go back to the slides and show people what's coming up next.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, just to recap quick, as we saw with the Can Tear Out Tabs mode, it's going to behave just like your browsers do in Edge and Chrome, creates that new window and lets you easily, lets your users easily just integrate to that deep OS features with the Snap API. So it just feels like any other Windows application. So really kind of great new improvements in this space to the Windows App SDK. And WinUI. And so what's next for them, right? That's the big question. So our 1.7 experimental release will be coming hopefully next week with Ignite. And so we've got a lot of great features in here for both WinUI and Windows App SDK. We're going to reintroduce the title bar control that was at build. This is actually going to be that same version. We're just wrapping up the community feedback period for this control. So we should see improvements based on that feedback coming up here in future releases. We have windowing improvements. So actually, that's something we didn't talk about during the demo, is that if you want to make sure that that new window is kind of a little smaller and positioned over the mouse cursor, there's some more work that you have to do to kind of get that polished experience. But the new windowing APIs in 1.7 here should help make that a lot easier for you to implement. So we'll be updating the samples and everything with that in the future as we progress through the release. And then if you're from UWP and moving to the Windows App SDK and WinUI 3, we have APIs for web authentication, camera capture, background triggers. So these are things that have been kind of highly requested over the last few years. And so we have the initial versions of these coming in this experimental release. So be sure to try those out and provide us feedback on there. And then finally, like we talked about before, we have the new Windows Copilot runtime APIs that everyone's been waiting for to do local AI running on your machine.
Yeah, and I've seen some samples of that title bar, and I've heard people asking about it, and it's really nice.
Yeah, we're really excited about the title bar. We're really excited about to see what people do with the Windows Copilot runtime APIs with Silica,
that's the next one I'm looking forward to playing with.
Yeah, all those things. It's going to be really awesome to see what people build. And so there's lots more Windows native app sessions here at .NET Conf. So regardless of which types of different technologies you're using, if you're building on Windows, be sure to check out some of these sessions. We have one on AI as well, and Sergio and I are giving a talk on Friday as a YouTube video that's about MVVM and WPF and WinUI. So lots of great different sessions here that are coming up or have already happened. So be sure to check them out in your .NET Conf viewing party. And if you want to know more about native AOT or .NET MAUI and other applications, frameworks that work with the Windows App SDK, be sure to check out some of these other sessions as well. And so I think I forgot to mention it before, but I think we might have a couple times for questions. So we really thank you for being here with us today, and be sure to tweet at #.NETConf if you have questions.